cosmic fine-tuning is this remarkable fact that the mathematical formulas that describe the universe, as well as the numbers that are associated with them. Okay, so there's a number associated with the attractive force of gravity, for example. We call that the gravitational constant. There's a number associated with how fast the universe is expanding. Okay, there's a number associated with the speed of light, for example. That is the speed of light. There's numbers or values associated with the forces that are at work in the center of an atom. For example, the force that holds protons and neutrons together so they don't repel each other, and that makes possible an atom in the first place, et cetera. Those are called strong and weak nuclear forces. So there are numbers associated with all these forces. And as Stephen Hawking himself says in this book, Brief History of Time, okay, at one point in the book, he says, the remarkable fact is that all these forces seem to be fine-tuned to allow a universe that can support life. Okay, and that's quite remarkable. And Hawking admits that you could take this as evidence for a creator. And interestingly, he doesn't even bring up arguments against a creator. Just kind of offhand, you could take that as evidence for a creator. So okay, thank you for that. But many others have seen that as really quite strong evidence. And in fact, one of my favorite books, Anthony Flew, he was the world's most famous atheist before Richard Dawkins kind of took that mantle. So when I was in my adolescence, he was the notorious bad boy of...
Do you know there's a debate online, I think you can still find it, where Flew debates Dr. William Lane Craig.
Yes.
So it's wild to see his turnaround.
It is. And a very influential book that I read in my youth was a debate between Flew and Gary Habermas on the resurrection. Did the resurrection happen? And Habermas got the better of Flew in that discussion. For a number of reasons, and that was very impactful for me. I think it was like 13 or something like that. And but then Flew comes around in the last couple of years of his life, and it was largely the fine-tuning argument that Flew eventually found persuasive. So let's go back to the fine-tuning argument, though, and just give our viewers a sense of what that's all about. So, we talked about these cosmic forces and formulas and the math associated with them. So all of these cosmological constants, that's not quite the right term, but all of the values of these constants that contribute to the mathematics that describe our universe have values that, so to speak, have to be what they are, neither too much nor too little. So it's kind of a Goldilocks phenomena.
Initial conditions?
Yeah, initial conditions as well, right? That's one of the factors.
Okay.
Like initial conditions would be how much mass is in the universe and how much, how powerful is the initial force that sends everything out into expansion and so on. And then you have constants that operate thereafter, like the speed of light, okay? So let's take the speed of light, because that's something that we can all relate to. We can at least relate to light, maybe not as speed. But if you tweak the speed of light up just a tad, and by a tad, I'm talking about something like a factor of 1 in 10 to the 37th or something like that. So that's one part in a sea of parts of 10 followed by 37 zeros. So this is a very, very large number. We can't even comprehend numbers that big, and that's why you have to use scientific notation and just note the number of zeros after them. So 10 to the 37. So it's like a trillion, whatever, some unbelievably large number. So if we tweak light up by just a tad, okay, then you get a universe that's too hot and too bright for life. Everything gets sterilized. Okay. You tweak it down just a tad and you get a universe that's too cold, and too dim, to support life. So we discover kind of unexpectedly, because going into it, our prior expectation would be, we could probably play it, make light a little brighter, make it a little dimmer, and probably we get along. We could probably stand with the sun being a little dimmer than it is, and a little brighter than it is, and so on. We wouldn't think initially that would make such a big difference, but it actually does. You work out the physics implications of a slower speed of light or a faster speed of light, and you find it basically has got to be just what it is. Otherwise, you get a universe that doesn't have any life in it. Let's take another force. Let's say the force of gravity. If you tweak gravity up by just a tad, and it's very, very, very sensitive, okay? Then you get a universe that expands with a Big Bang and then immediately goes back and crunches because gravity is too strong. You tweak it down just a little bit, and then everything expands before you can even get planets or stars. So the force of gravity isn't enough to pull the matter back into clumps that can become planets and stars. Without planets and stars, we don't have any life. Okay, so this repeats itself with all of these constants, and again we find, as Father Spitzer points out, and he's very good on this, and I think he's got some of the discussion of the fine tuning in this book. But as Father Spitzer points out, with all of these values of these different constants, like the speed of light or the force of gravity, they are all such that they can neither be more than they are or less than they are. So there's always a Goldilocks phenomena, which each of them, and for each of them, it's a very narrow band. Now, for each one of them, that's remarkable and highly unlikely. And then you take them all together, and there's about, cosmologists count up about 40 of these things. Initial mass, the strong and the weak nuclear force. I haven't even started talking about those because I don't, I haven't mastered that area of what exactly is going on with that. But I know from people who do know that they say those forces have to be exactly what they are. Et cetera, et cetera. And then you multiply all the probabilities together. And if you say, hey, the chance of light just by accident being exactly what it has to be for life, and you multiply that by the chance of gravity, et cetera, and so on, then you end up with an extremely, extremely low number. So life, is all balancing on a razor's edge, essentially, mathematically, to get. So getting a life-supporting universe is very difficult. There's virtually infinitely more ways to have a non-life-supporting universe than a life-supporting universe. And the fact that our universe has, surprise, surprise, just all the right forces, all the right constants, such that we can be here, that is surprising. That is odd. There's so many ways that things could go wrong. So, some people have used this analogy. It's like standing in front of a firing squad of 500 marksmen, and you're about to be executed, and they all fire and they all miss. And you're like, I'm still here. There were so many ways that this could go wrong. And you would suspect, some kind of conspiracy has to be going on here. Somebody paid them all off. This has to be organized. That is too low a probability occurrence.
That's a good response to an objection I've heard and was about to offer you. Namely, if the initial conditions and constants, etc., wasn't fine-tuned for rational life, then we wouldn't be here to ask it.
Right.
So, it's kind of like if you crashed in an airplane and walked out and then someone came up with the probabilities that you're still alive. Well, it's like, yeah, if I wasn't alive, I wouldn't be here to wonder at the initial conditions. So how is this really an argument for God?
Right. Yeah, and that is the executioner mental experiment is really the best answer to that. And many,
it's not just one marksman,
right? Yeah,
and it's not somebody who's never shot a gun before,
right? Yeah, it is, and really, it's more like 50,000 or 5 million when you look at the math. The probabilities are so low, so it's like having this immense number, 5,000 experts are all training their guns on you, and they all fire and they all miss, okay? And, Dawkins concedes, that there's force to the fine-tuning argument. Like I said, Flew concedes, and it eventually convinced him.
Hey, thank you so much for watching. Before you go, do us a favor, leave a comment, let us know what you thought of the video, like, and subscribe.